Hey guys, today I'm going to show you my chickens and I'm going to show you my worm composting bin, and then we'll take a look at some of the progress between the hydroponic and aquaponic tomatoes. So I decided that I wanted to get some chickens for some fresh eggs. And I got 4 chickens in this little chicken house that I built. And we won't let them out because they're not afraid of the big dogs, and they'll run right over there and the big dogs will probably put a hurt on these chickens. But they're very useful creatures to have around, besides the fact that they're laying fresh eggs, which they haven't started yet, but I anticipate any day now. They're about 5.5 months old. They are also a huge aid in terms of composting. They will eat almost anything that you give them, and obviously chicken manure has got lots of good stuff in it in terms of nitrogen. The chicken worm is then fed to the earthworms, which they will further decompose and make readily available to all of the plants. So I'll take you over there and show you that. This is my vermicomposting bin, or my worm composting bin. Nothing too high tech. It's just a plastic tub, and that's where all the worms live. What we'll do is throw our kitchen scraps and anything that's left over from the hydroponic and aquaponics in terms of organic matter, and it's all just thrown in here. The worms will eat it up and they produce this black soil. You cannot buy this. You absolutely cannot buy it. And you'll say, well gee, I saw some in the store, you know, it's readily available. I can buy worm castings and all of that. And yes, you can. But you have to consider this stuff as being alive, because that's exactly what's going on here. Tons of microorganisms, bacteria, and all of these beneficial things that our plants love. If you expose it, if you put it in a plastic bag, seal it up, and expose it to sunlight and everything else over a period of time, the microorganisms and all the activity begins to die off. And you'll still get some benefit out of it, but it's not going to be anything like you're going to get out of having your own bin of worms. Initially I started with 2 kilograms of worms, and I threw them in here, and I use this stuff all the time. And I'll just feed the plants out front, which I'll show you, and you can see how well they're doing. But lots and lots of worms in here. These are African night crawlers, and the reason why I'm using these here in Thailand is because they're extremely heat tolerant. And I didn't want to have a bunch of worms dying off because it does get incredibly warm here. And they do just fine. As my understanding, they're not as aggressive in terms of composting as something like a red wiggler, which I think is considered to be the best composting worm. But I would highly recommend that anybody that's got their big or small garden, no matter what your situation, if you're planting in soil, get yourself some worms, throw your food scraps in there, your organic matter. Don't throw meat and dairy, no cheese. It's just going to end up stinking and the worms aren't going to eat it. It'll still break down over time, but just stick to organic matter, your leafy greens. A lot of the seeds and things that you throw in here from fruit, they'll end up sprouting as well. Just pull them out. They're always going to be leggy like this because they're looking for sun. I keep this covered with the styrofoam all the time to keep any rain and as much sunlight as I can out of here. The worms don't appreciate that. The other thing that's really cool about worms is they control their own population. If you're feeding them a lot, they will continue to reproduce eggs and hatch more worms. If you slow down on the feeding and there's not enough to go around, then they'll stop reproducing per se. So that's pretty cool. Alright, so I'll take you out front and show you the plants that are fed this worm composting, and you can see just exactly how healthy they are. Alright, so in all of these pots are planted different vegetables. Most of it's all eggplant. There's some red okra over there, and I'll get in closer and give you a close-up of what's going on. But these plants are fed nothing but the worm composting. The original soil mix that was placed into the pots was a potting mix that I purchased in a bag. It was written in Thai. I don't even know what it was. I was just told it was potting mix. I know there was some organic matter in it because I kept finding chunks of vegetables that hadn't entirely decomposed. So it was a pretty decent mix to begin with, but it was quite sandy. So what I do is I come in here about once a week and I take those worm castings and all that decomposed soil that you just saw, and I feed it to these plants. And they're all doing very well. They're all flowering appropriately, producing fruit. Haven't had any issues with the okra or the eggplant or anything else that I've planted in here. So they're all doing quite well. This is the first eggplant. These are called ping tongue. They're a long, thin, pink, purplish hued eggplant. They're pretty cool and they grow really fast. Once the fruit sets, they really take off. This is a red okra, and again, fruit is setting. These things grow really fast. This is just from the time the flower is set to a fruit, this is about 3 days. It's crazy. This right here will look like this okra in just a few days. They grow incredibly fast. Remember that basil plant that I showed you in my last video? He's really taken off. We've been eating off of them, making tomato sauces and soups, and it's nice to throw a little fresh basil in there. But all in all, you can see what's going on here. These guys get nothing, no alternative fertilizer other than what's in the worm castings. And I do water them with water from the fish tank as well. So that probably helps a little bit. There's obviously nitrates available in from the aquaponic system. So I've gone and done what I said I didn't want to do, and that was hang up a bunch of net in front of the house. But the birds were getting so out of control. They were literally eating everything that just started to turn, and there was no stopping them. So I've netted them up, and even still I'm having some problems because right here I wasn't able to fasten the net completely against the house, and they're literally flying in there and maneuvering their way to the middle, all the way to the middle where the fruit is. And you can see they're still eating it. There's one that's been eaten there. There's another one that's been eaten. So I'll have to seal it up as best as I can. There's still a few fruits in here that haven't been touched yet. And I have yet to get a vined ripened tomato off of any of these, except for the small ones, but no large ones, because the birds just get to them, and I can't seem to stop them. So still having lots of problems with that. But we'll just keep at it. Hopefully we can keep the little woodpeckers out of here. Here are the aquaponic tomatoes. Again, these are pink Brandywines on the right and Brazilian Beauties on the left. I started to kind of freak out because my pink Brandywines were not setting any fruit. They were flowering, they just weren't setting any fruit at all. And then I went and looked at my hydroponics, and those were doing the same thing. So I got online, started doing some reading, and basically what I found out was pink Brandywines are late season producers. You may not see fruit on your first and second sets of flowers. It's normal, don't worry about it. They'll come when they're ready to produce. And then of course I was worried about the aquaponics tomatoes not setting fruit. However, they have started to do that already. The Brazilian Beauty here, all of these, I don't know if you can see it, but all of these have little fruit bulbs inside there. Flowers have just fallen. And back in here, we've got a nice little group that is already set as well. Right in here. So they look like they're doing fine. Now the hydroponic tomatoes are much further along. I'll take you out there and show you that. But their fruit has already been set for probably 2 to 3 weeks and is much larger in size. But the virility of these plants, they just look incredible. They're very, very healthy. I left all of these double stemmed as well, double vined, whereas the hydroponics I trimmed to single vine. And a quick overview, got lots of lettuce going on here. This grow bed is empty. The baby bok choy that I showed you in my first video, this is about ready to harvest. A lot of it is. Again, it's just baby bok choys intended to be eaten when it's small. And the lettuce that I initially had covered to keep the birds off it is all growing as well. Real quick, I just wanted to show you my next big growing endeavor is going to be peppers of all kinds. I've got a bunch of jalapenos, some different bells, sweet peppers. None of these are hot. I don't like hot peppers. My vagina is way too large for me to be able to enjoy them in any cuisine because they just hurt. I can't do them. But the peppers are doing well, and normally the birds come and they eat these, but it seems that they're on top of the fish tank, it seems that if I keep them under the plastic roof that you've seen before, the birds don't really come down in here. And I don't know if that's a reflection thing, kind of like the CD concept of they think that there's a body of water and that's what's causing the reflection. But I've got nowhere to put these pepper plants yet, which means that I'm going to have to build more Dutch buckets. So I'll be turning this entire wall of my house all the way up as high as I can go into a Dutch bucket system on the wall. So when I start doing that, I'll bring you guys along and you can check that out. Alright, these are two pink brandy ones right here, and between these two plants I think I've only got one fruit that's set, and it's down here. Oh, here's another one. Here's a couple more actually. So they're coming along, but I'm not too freaked out yet. They just take longer to set. Now the Brazilian Beauties, as what that I just showed you had set in the aquaponics, they are much further along, much larger in size, much more fruit has been set, and they're continuing to grow. Lots of fruit set. This one's already got 3 sets of flowers that have turned to fruit with another set of flowers on top. And I'm most excited about the purple Cherokees. They're still coming along. They've got a ways to go yet. Interestingly enough, I've got a purple Cherokee that I transplanted into the aquaponic system at the same time as I planted these, and that purple Cherokee has already produced flowers and none of these have. So it's sort of like hit or miss on variety seemingly as to which is going to go faster, because all of these initial tomatoes, these larger ones, are ahead of the aquaponics tomatoes. Yet I've got purple Cherokees in the aquaponics, they're ahead of the hydroponics. So I don't know, we'll just have to keep watching it and testing it, and of course we'll get our weights and yield as well, and that'll really give us a good idea as to how things are going to go. Alright guys, that's it for today. I'll see you again probably next week.